Right, hello, I'm back. I'm Klivsky. I am the designer and coder of Democracy 3 and the new DLC coming for it, which is Electioneering, which I'm going to talk about again. Wow, UK politics. Normally it would be sarcastic of me to say, wow, hasn't UK politics been interesting lately? But it's just been insane. If you're watching this in the future, you'll know how this all turned out, but obviously we have no idea at the moment. So we have voted to leave the EU. Their now Prime Minister resigned. Then I think something like 80% of the shadow cabinet were fired or resigned. Then there was a vote of no confidence in the leader of the opposition where 80% voted against him. And so right now, we don't know whether there'll be a new referendum, a new general election, and who will be the leader of either of the two main parties. So it's complete chaos. Very exciting times. And slightly scary. And the stock market's gone bananas, down and then up, and the dollar. Politics is exciting stuff. Anyway, which brings us to exciting politics games. Now, you might be noticing in this game, if you played Democracy 3, that oh my god, I'm popular. I don't know how I've achieved this. Probably vast skill. Although a catastrophic debt, which normally goes along with such populist moves. Anyway, forgetting all that, the reason I've picked this particular save game is so that I can show you some of the remaining stuff that I haven't talked about yet in Electioneering. And Electioneering is kind of accessed from this button up here. But also if I go to the sort of quarterly report, all kinds of crazy stuff's been happening. But I've also got these campaign speeches and manifesto promises have like popped up here. We've dealt with campaign speeches before. Manifesto promises is a new thing, so let's do that, and then let's do perceptions, which is really cool. Not that this bit isn't cool, this bit's amazing. So manifesto pledges. Now I've picked a kind of second term thing here. So I've made manifesto pledges in the past, and those are these coloured top 3 here that I made before the last election, which I won. So I pledged to cut income tax, raise equality, and cut intelligence services. So here we've got information on like what happened there. I have managed to cut income tax. It gets slightly confusing with policies that actually have a percentage, because when we say cut income tax by 25%, I don't mean we have a 50%. Oh well, no, that wouldn't work. I don't mean we have like a 75% tax rate and we drop it 25% to 50%. I mean we drop it by a quarter, and it's even more confusing because the actual rate doesn't actually correspond to that, so it gets very confusing. So basically, when we're saying, you know, we're cutting income tax by a quarter, and I have done that. In order to achieve that, I needed to get it down to 23%. It's actually at 18%. So I've gone above and beyond. If I click on that, you'll see that the rate is actually 17%, which is very confusing, isn't it? Don't worry about it. Because we have this handy little box here that says, you know, what I need to get the rate down to. And if I go past this little extra icon here showing that I had a pledge, that I will have achieved it. And it'll always tell you how many turns to go. Let's revert that because we've achieved that. And presumably that would have made some people happy. So cutting income tax, probably happy middle income people. Yeah, well, you know, relatively happy. So, manifesto pledges. You only get an opportunity to do this once. It's just before the election. So, in the final moments before the election, you get to make all kinds of irresponsible pledges. And they are decided for you. So, the game suggests here are the pledges that you could make. And making those pledges will get you some way towards what the final effect would be if you actually did it. So, for example, GDP raised by 25%. It's a bit of a bold claim. Well, let's say inheritance tax, because that's quite an interesting one. Cut inheritance tax. If I make that pledge now, it will cost me 3 political capital. Wow, Inheritance tax is currently 78%. Wow. So cutting it to a mere 58%, it's going to make the kind of people happy that you'd expect: retired people, conservatives, middle income, the wealthy. It's not as good as actually doing it, but it's a last minute sort of desperate plea to get support. So this is a new thing in the game, and it's now, if I've actually did I make that? I did make that. So yeah, it will show up here as white, meaning it's not effective yet, because the next turn is actually the election, which I'm bound to win because I've got enormous support. So in order to achieve that, I am actually going to have to cut it below that. But like we say, it's not active yet, so it doesn't matter. That is Manifesto pledges, which I think are quite interesting. They are literally, when the election is on a knife edge, you can suddenly come out and say, free chocolate for everyone. You can't actually, that's not a policy, but I'm sure that'll be modded in. But anyway, I think that's quite an interesting thing. One of the more amusing new things in electioneering is perceptions. So this is a new thing we haven't looked at before. I spent a long time trying to work out what perceptions would be good. It's a very difficult subject in game design, this, because you want something that is considered to be universally good or bad, if it's negative. So I went with trustworthy, strong leader, and compassionate. For example, kind of being in touch with the people, being ordinary, being an ordinary person, is kind of considered a good thing for a political candidate, and that's where, to some extent, actually a lot of UK leaders do badly. George Bush was quite good at this, because he built up this whole kind of, I'm just a cowboy on my ranch and not like an ex-oil industry guy that went to a top university. He was very good at coming across as kind of, I'm much more ordinary than I actually am. Bill Clinton had it as well, to some extent. The problem with that is it doesn't really come down to policy. It's entirely media management. So I didn't consider it to be that interesting a decision, because really the decision there is just how much effort do I expend on trying to make myself look normal, despite the fact that I want to run the country. And I didn't find that an interesting strategic decision compared with policy decisions. So what I wanted was perceptions of the candidate that may be at odds with what they actually do. In other words, what perceptions do you get from a candidate, not from their actual physical appearance or any nonsense like that, but from what they do? So I'll explain what I mean. Trustworthy, I'll come back to, but strong leader, for example. If I click on this, it's not immediately apparent. You can click on this. We've been all over the place here. We recently had our Chancellor resign, so we don't seem so strong a leader. We've taken a little dip there as a result, because people feel I can't even control my own cabinet. I've done some media spin stuff, which we'll show in a moment. If violent crime was really out of control, I wouldn't be considered a strong leader, that I can't guarantee safety on the streets. If military spending was really high, I would be considered a strong leader in a kind of Vladimir Putin-esque kind of, or a kind of Donald Trump, supporting our troops kind of, I'm a strong leader kind of guy. If we look at compassionate, I appear to be very compassionate. Doesn't sound right. So yeah, a disability benefit, that has like a disproportionate effect. It's not just the people who are benefiting from that, but people kind of think that obviously I care about the disabled as a candidate. Childcare provision as well, food stamps. These are all things that make me appear compassionate. Now at the bottom, this is an interesting one, help at food bank. Now this is a media spin event that I have done to make myself appear compassionate, and yet it's negative. The reason for that is it went wrong. In other words, I maybe said something really embarrassing at a food bank. So this is kind of like an event backfiring. So if we look at these, obviously they do come from your policies, and that is an ongoing thing. But you can also adjust these by media stunts. So if we look at trustworthy, for example, these are events that I could launch in order to make myself appear more trustworthy. Could release my tax return, could televise a cabinet meeting, invite cameras into the home, whatever. They each have a different impact on perception, a different success chance and capital cost. So I could spend 5 political capital here to invite cameras into the cabinet meeting. That would be open government and make me appear trustworthy. But it has a 19% chance of just screwing up. I might come across as a bully, or there might be some political gaffe. So if we do this, yay. Okay, so that went well. I'm considered to be more trustworthy. That's excellent. That's not guaranteed. And we got a number of these things. I've already done landing on an aircraft carrier. That's not aimed at anyone in particular. It's surprising how many political leaders have driven a tank, actually, as a sort of media spin event. So I'm going to train with the army. Success chance 52%. In other words, something could go wrong here. Maybe I'm really out of condition. I train with the army trying to be like Putin, but then I just collapse and have a heart attack or something. So yeah, okay. So that's a complete failure. I look an idiot. So anyway, what effect does any of that have? If I pick a random focus group, here we go. So David, whatever, a capitalist amongst other things, and an environmentalist, very high approval. His opinion of my ministers, which we haven't mentioned, is negative. The perceptions are positive, and they will be for everyone. They'll be the same. The perceptions, the funding and ministers will be the same for everyone. But they just show how this final result is calculated. So basically, I'm doing well on the media spin thing. The ministers thing, not so much. So if we look at the cabinet, you will find that they also have a campaigning stat now. Some are good at political campaigning, this bottom one here. Some aren't. So this is an additional thing to take into account because it will affect people's votes. Okay, so when all said and done, let's have the election and see what happens, because I don't think I've shown that, and that's different. So I'm going to win overwhelmingly. Okay, but that's, don't pay no attention to that. So this is the new election screen that I'm very proud of. All the look, animated stuff. So this tells you what I told you before in terms of player turnout, opposition turnout. We obviously had a huge activist turnout boost, so we probably had a massive party. We also completely overspent the opposition. So the only thing that was really against us from a electioneering point of view was our ministers. Our ministers were actually not very good at campaigning. But all these different factors are taken into account and shown here, and we won. Obviously it's not as simple as that. A few sort of last things. This is the last video I'm going to do before we release electioneering, so yay, excitement. If you want to beta test, check out my blog at www.cliffski.com, and there's details there on how you can be a beta tester, because we've got just over a week until it comes out. You can add it to a wishlist on Steam and so on now. Also, if you're watching this right now, it is the Steam sale, and Democracy 3 is on quite a discount in that sale. So if you like the look of this game but you don't know what the hell, you've never seen it before, you should probably grab it in the Steam sale straight away. Do that. Also, subscribe to this YouTube channel, because we're going to be doing a lot more videos in future. So once this is released, we'll also be doing playthroughs, and we have other stuff in the works which we will also be doing videos about. Please buy the Electioneering DLC. I think it makes a really positive impact on the game. It really sort of fleshes out this whole area of the election. And thank you for watching this, and thank you for buying my games.